It's the Brad and John Show.
It is the Brad and John Show. Today's date is the 9th of February. We're into the second week of February 2026. This is the B Block, and what we do in the B Block is we do this.
It's time for Brad's Top 3.
And then after we do that, we do this.
It's number 3.
John, I know this is not a local story, but the Nancy Guthrie story, Savannah Guthrie's mom. Tell me where you're at on this. Tell me what you think's going on in this.
I have no theories about what's going on here. I do think it's predictable. From what little I know about it, there have been some fake ransom claims or ransom notes. I don't think anybody would be surprised that in a high-profile issue, you would have people looking to cash in and throwing out some false leads and hoping they get a little Bitcoin out of the deal. Do you have a theory of what happened here?
Well, let me just say this. RHIP, you know what that stands for?
I don't know.
Rank has its privilege, okay? And in this case, It's Savannah Guthrie because, and your mother and my mother are both gone, but if they were here and this had happened to us, do you think that the FBI would be showing up, and do you think that President Trump would be saying, I'm getting all federal resources? Do you think there would be police cars at the residence for a week keeping traffic away? Do you think any of these things would be happening?
Oh, absolutely not. Now, hold on, though, Brad. If my mom, rest her soul, or your mom, rest her soul, was kidnapped or was taken away, I doubt there would be a huge Bitcoin price on her head. You get what I'm saying? Maybe it's because
I get it.
We're sending a message. You get what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah, exactly. But I get it that people who are in the limelight, people that are, and to the point where somebody's going to say, well, you're in the limelight, you're in the radio. Okay, look, I'm a local guy. I'm looking at the audience meter, the audience meter right now. I think we have 4.5 people listening. There's one guy's got one eye open, one eye closed or something like that. I
have multiple personalities, so I count as 3.
Right. I just say, and the sad part of this is, I have to say, I don't think she's alive. I think, and the bizarre part of this is, think about this. How many crimes do we see now where there's 14 different people that have Ring camera footage, and there's they ping the phones and stuff like that? I heard a guy over the weekend give the analogy that look at the Idaho murders where the 4 college students were murdered in Idaho, and everybody's going, so the police don't know what they're doing. They're really blowing this. It's a small town police department. They don't know what they're doing. And then all of a sudden they arrest the guy, and you realize these guys did an incredible job of tracking down that guy that, allegedly, because we still have to stay, allegedly murdered the 4 kids. Maybe that's going to be the same here. I don't know, but it doesn't sound that way. It sounds like they are, to use a word my mom used to use all the time, stymied. They don't know what's going on. They're like, okay, we don't have any clues. And the bizarre part of it was, if you heard this thing over the weekend, one of the neighbors came over and said, hey, there's a camera up on the roof. And I'm going like, how do they not see that?
Yeah, how do they miss that? That seems like a pretty important piece of information.
And I'm thinking to myself, and the interesting thing was, have you seen the aerial footage of this house?
I have not, no.
It's interesting in that a lot of I shouldn't say a lot of the houses, but we don't have too many houses in the Midwest like this. It has a flat roof, and the reason we don't have houses like that is because of snow primarily, and other things, but primarily snow, because you don't want a flat roof because the snow is going to build up there. It's not going to, not only that, you're talking an area that doesn't get a lot of rain, where we get a fair amount of rain. Why isn't that nobody climbed up on the roof? How in the world could the next door neighbor, after 7 days of having the FBI and the local crime lab there, how do they know? Oh, let's climb on the roof. Oh, look, there's a camera here. I don't get it. The whole thing to me is just, I feel sorry for our Savannah and her siblings. By the way, have you heard her brother talk?
I have not. No, I haven't watched the videos.
I'm telling you, this guy could clean up in the voiceover business. God, he has a beautiful voice. He has a deep, resonant voice, and he's very articulate. I'm thinking to myself, man, this guy could sit in a studio doing VOs all day long, Anyway.
Could you take a few minutes of his audio and maybe put it into an AI program? He could do a promo for our show.
I would never do that because I don't do things like that.
Hi, this is John Combest. I wanted to invite you to listen to my show on Westplex.
I would never, ever do anything like that, John. Okay, it's time for number 2.
It's time for Brad's number 2. It's time for Brad's number 2.
Okay, Okay, did by any chance you watch any of the TPUSA thing? The alternative halftime show yesterday?
I did not watch that halftime show yesterday, Brad. I missed it.
Okay, the interesting thing about it is I've heard two different numbers. I've heard they had 5 million viewers, and I heard they had 25 million viewers. I'm thinking to myself, okay, which one? There's a little bit of
That's a big difference. That's not like 5 and 6 or 6, 7.
There's a little gap between 5 and 25. So I don't, do you here? You know what? Let's move on to number one, and we'll discuss the halftime show because you took my number one, and my number one was the houses they're going to demolish up there in Florissant. And once again, can we get enough of the Egans in Florissant? I mean, like,
you mean the Lowrys?
The Lowrys and the Egans. Yeah, the Lowrys were like, I don't know, what is this, like the third generation of Lowrys that run Florissant now?
Yeah, and they're not to be confused with the Spice family, a completely different Lowrys.
Okay, well, let's just move on to number one, and we'll just talk about the halftime show, okay?
And now, big finish, Brad's number.
Okay, being that I'm not a sports fan, and this is a true story, last night I was here at the office doing some work at the radio station. At about 9:30, I grabbed my phone and I said to myself, okay, what's going on with the game? And at that point in time, if you know the beginning of the game, I think the first half, I think the whole first half, there was no touchdowns at all. I think it was all field goals, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. Yeah, it was like 9-0, I think, at halftime.
Yeah, because I didn't watch the game. I watched part of the game, but I didn't watch it all. But I did watch the entire halftime show. Now, let me say this. From a production standpoint, I was blown away because it was incredible that there were no flub-ups. And talking about a complicated production, they didn't do anything, as far as I can see. They didn't do anything as far as pre-tape. This was all done live. And the thing for me was, once again, this is Brad, the production nerd, the video guy. The camera work was amazing. The way they had the cameraman obviously with a steady cam, probably walking backwards, shooting the shot of Bad Bunny walking through the sugarcane thing and the whole bit. But there were probably, I don't know, 150, 200 people in the cast. You know what I'm saying? There were also, it was like little different villages he was in. One time he was here, one time he was there, and then they had the overhead shots. I just was blown away by how well the production was. And the crazy part of it was, I'm thinking to myself, okay, John, explain to me the dudes on the telephone poles. Did you get that? Did that make any sense to you at all?
No, I didn't get that at all. And I saw probably 75% of it. I was doing some other things. But yeah, I missed that. So what was happening on the telephone poles?
Well, he has this shot of these like four guys in these telephone poles, and they're like tied off. They got their safety harnesses on, whatever you want to call them. They're FBMs, FBH, full body harnesses. And they're doing all sorts of weird, things on the poles. It's like hanging by their safety harness. And then Bad Bunny climbs one of the poles and gets up on like a podium that's on one of the poles, and he keeps singing. And I'm going like, okay, I get the sugarcane stuff, and I get the little villages in Puerto Rico and all that stuff. I don't get the telephone poles. And maybe it's like a jab at the fact that, if you know the whole crazy thing, Puerto Rico had the nasty hurricanes, and it knocked out almost the entire power to the country, and they had a terrible infrastructure issue, and maybe they was like making fun of the fact that, hey, we got guys still working on the telephone poles because we still don't have electricity in Puerto Rico. I just didn't get it. It didn't make any sense to me.
Maybe there's something. Is it a reference to that song's lyrics? Like, is he talking about calling somebody, or do we know what the lyrics were?
Well, that was the other problem. How the hell would you know? Because unless you spoke
That's
Spanish.
True. So it could be a reference to calling, or it could be a result.
Right.
It could be a reference to something like that.
The interesting thing is, I would like to see a translation because already I've heard people say, well, if you know Spanish, it was a very un-American halftime show. I go, I don't know Spanish. I should call up my daughter, and she won't talk to me, but she's fluent in Spanish. And it's to the point where I didn't get it. I didn't get it. And the interesting thing for me is, here, let me go back to the production thing. Okay. Think about this for a minute. Okay. Halftime, the game ends, second quarter ends. Okay. They go to a couple commercial breaks, and their people are on the field. The football players are out there in the field. They walk off the field. Okay. From that moment, clock starts ticking. Okay. They run a couple commercial breaks. They do a couple things where the people are sitting at that like table. Hey, boy, what a great game. They play a couple more commercials. And then magically, the halftime show. Do you have any idea how many production people, PAs, whatever you want to call them, it would take to move all that stuff on set like that and get it set up?
Yeah, I mean, dozens, if not hundreds, right?
Yes.
And they would think of how many times they rehearsed it in the last few months on that field.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Well, I don't think they probably did it on the field. They probably had some kind of a practice facility they were in, like it was probably inside.
Sure,
so,
I get it.
So
yeah.
you couldn't see what it is. But that had to be rehearsed. I don't know, maybe you're right, maybe hundreds of times. And it had to be a full-blown rehearsal, start to finish, all production people, sound guys. Once again, I look at things like that and I think to myself, okay, he's using a wireless headset microphone. I know guys, and this is going to be nerd kind of stuff, okay? Do you know there is a woman who works for the NFL who coordinates all the frequencies used at events? Do you know this?
I did not know that, no.
Yes. It used to be a woman because I know that some of the guys used to do the Rams would tell me about this, that she is the one that works with all the teams because there are so many wireless microphones out there. Now, here's another nerd thing. Once upon a time, the wireless microphones were in the 600 megahertz range, and actually they went from like the high 400 megahertz range up to like into the 600s. And there are a lot of the wireless microphones, professional, expensive wireless microphones that were in the 600 megahertz range. And the FCC one day said, you know what? I think cellular needs those frequencies. And they took the frequencies away from the people who use those wireless microphones. Bottom line is there's less and less bandwidth for all those wireless microphones. And if you talk to anybody who's in the production business, I know a guy just recently, matter of fact, last month I met with the guy who did this for a living, and he talked about this, how incredibly hard it was for him, like when he's doing events in Las Vegas and things like that, because some of these wireless microphones and wireless, there's also wireless transmitters on the guys' guitars and all the other instruments and stuff like that. I mean, the coordination of just the frequencies and not have the microphones drop out or not have he's got an IFB in his ear, he's listening to a monitor. All that stuff's got to work. And to me, it's just like, wow, it's amazing, just amazing.
Yeah, and so I mean, that's why you need your $1 million commercials for revenue, don't you?
Well, supposedly he doesn't get paid. That's the story. Did you hear that story? That supposedly none of the performers for the Super Bowl get paid. They do it for free. Did you know that?
Yeah, I could believe that for sure.
Yeah, because of the fact that, the interesting thing was, I have people say to me, well, why don't you play any Bad Bunny songs? And I said to someone yesterday, I said, I can go on American Top 40. I can go on to the AT40 listing. And I did for yesterday. And there were no Bad Bunny songs in the top 40, okay? Then you go into the Billboard Hot 100, which is more open. I think they do a better job on the Billboard. There goes my phone. The Billboard Hot 100. Okay, the only Bad Bunny song I could find on the Billboard Hot 100 was, guess what position it was at yesterday? Probably still there today.
99.
85. And that was the only.
Wow, that's very far down the list.
Right. So to the point where they say he's the world's most streamed guy, but that's the whole point. It's not. I don't think he's that streamed in America. He's an international hit, and that's just like there's people in Europe that are huge in Europe that we don't even know about in the United States. And like even in Canada, I don't know if this is Brad nerd stuff again. I don't know if you know this. In Canada, whatever the equivalent of the FCC, I think it's the CAB or something like that. In Canada, there's a rule that radio stations, I believe, have to play a third of the music that they play on all the radio stations have to be Canadian artists. So,
that's true. I remember hearing that on listening to some Canadian radio podcasts. Yeah, and the idea is also isn't there something similar where if you cast a TV show in Canada, a percentage of the actors and actresses have to be Canadian?
Yes, and then if you know anything about the movie industry, and especially in Toronto has pulled a lot of business away from Hollywood because they've got all these incentives. The same thing that like Georgia does. This has been debated in Missouri. Remember, you probably have stories about this. About the Missouri used to have a board that would encourage people to come and shoot their TV shows in in Missouri, and they would get certain tax breaks. And I guess the high point of that was if you run into people who don't live in Missouri and they go, "Wow, I watched that show Ozark. Boy, that's some pretty area down there." And I go, "Guess what? That's not the Ozarks.
That was filmed in Georgia."
That was filmed in Georgia because the Georgia Commission has all sorts of benefits, and to the point where, like, how many shows do you see that were like shot in St. Louis that aren't? They bring in a film crew to do some B-roll, and they drive across the arch. Matter of fact, there's a I think it's a Chevy truck commercial. It's running right now that shows the Chevy truck going across the United States, and there's one shot of the truck going across the Eads Bridge that lasts like 1.3 seconds, and you figure,
and it's probably AI.
Right? It's
probably an AI video. When we come back, Brad, there's a piece of football information that involves the NFL, Missouri politics, and someone who went to St. Francis Borgia.
Wow, who could that be?
I bet you know.